I'm working on trying to get the YouTube chat popped out. Somebody told me that that's what they do. I think Greg told me he pops out the YouTube chat. I have yet to try to interact with chat at all during a live stream. I tried once, like with it on my phone, and just couldn't keep up. Who knows if I'm going to be able to today, but going to try to pop it out.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to interact on these strategy shows with shelf life than it is on the Deeper Dive or Live Before Live.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, man, let's do it. Hopefully we make it through the hour, you know? Yeah, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NFL strategy show, a very special Saturday edition presented by Jock Market. I'm Dave Loughran at Loughy_D on Twitter. For those of you on podcast, LOUGHY_D, joined by, and I'm excited for this, we don't do too many shows together, Neil Orfield at Player Q DFS on Twitter, Millie Maker winner, DFS player extraordinaire, here to break down. Let's be real, Neil. This is, I'm taking the hood off for this, didn't know it was on. This is an absolute shit show for tomorrow's slate.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I'm looking forward to breaking it down, but also everything that we say here might be irrelevant by tomorrow. I joked earlier that we're going to be talking about a slate that might not happen. I think it's probably going to happen. I think it's possible that the Browns game gets moved to Monday or Tuesday, but if I had a lean right now, I still think that it's going to happen, especially with the new protocols that if a player now tests negative, they can come back. So there's a lot of moving parts in this slate, but it should be a fun one, I think.
Yeah, it should. It might be miserable, but if they do move it, that would mean we have NFL on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and potentially Tuesday, which would be kind of cool. And by the way, Neil, if you wanted to pop that out, the 3 lines up top on the chat.
I did. I found it. I've got it. I see Stephen Leibowitz wants to talk shit to me. So go ahead, Stephen. I can see it. I was going to respond. So here's my only issue is when I try to do this, I try to do the @ thing. I was going to @ Stephen, and it doesn't like populate with his username. So maybe that's something I got to deal with, I guess. But I can see it.
It works for me.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why.
Works for me.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not sure what it is. But anyway, Ricky Bobby, what's up, man? It says, Loughy and Neil, what a great show this is going to be. Yeah, I'm excited for it, for sure. And Patrick Reed, you guys better hire me if I get fired by my boss, as I listen to you guys like every single day and mostly shows too at work. But still waiting for my first big win. It's coming, man. It's coming for everybody. Yeah, look, here's what I know, Neil. When I was typing up the run sheet for this, and just looking over the injuries, the Vegas Raiders, you've got Darren Waller. You know, Patriots have a couple running backs questionable, but as of now, I'm just approaching that as if they play. Indy's pretty healthy, and they're coming off of a bye week, so you're pretty good there. But Cleveland has just an absurd, and we knew this going into it, an absurd amount of issues here with COVID and ankle injuries and concussions. I mean, you couldn't pick a worse week to be the Cleveland Browns playing on a Saturday. It's really bad.
Yeah, it's really tough. Hopefully the COVID stuff, if they test negative now, maybe we'll get some of these players back, which throws a wrinkle into how we plan. I mean, can Jarvis Landry come back? Can Baker Mayfield come back?
Right.
If they can, that kind of changes the whole slate. But yeah, it's a tough one to break down just because there are so many COVID issues. And also, I mean, we're seeing what's happening in the NBA. We're just getting so many everyday new players testing positive for COVID. It wouldn't be that surprising if some of these players who are currently in are going to be testing positive within the next 24 hours. And then, if it happens tomorrow, they're not going to have that opportunity to then test negative the next day. So it's really hard to say who is going to be in and who's going to be out. But, for now, we can kind of lean towards assuming the players who have tested positive will continue to test positive. I think that's kind of the only approach that we can do a day ahead of time.
Well, I'm happy to be talking Saturday football. So let's dive into this. Before we do, hit that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. We're 1,400 away from 70,000 subs. You guys make this worthwhile. Let me put it to you that way. It's a whole lot more fun when we keep gaining subs and viewers and people who want to watch these shows. So if you like this, it only takes a second. If you enjoy the free content, hit that thumbs up and subscribe. And if you want to join, hit that join down below as well. You get the custom emojis, the free super chats each month, the badges that get cooler. You see the badges in chat right now. Sterling's got one. A bunch of other people you'll see pop up. Steven's got one as well. priority access to questions as well in terms of Discord, premium Discord members, and our YouTube guys here. When you join the team, you got that. And of course, we'll shout you out, all of that great stuff. So you want to go for it. Love to have you on board. If not, that's okay too. All right, Neil, 2 games to touch on. Let's kick it off with the Raiders and Cleveland. That's 4:30. As of now, they're playing. So we'll see. We're going to have to do what we can to decipher this. And I think as of now, my assumption is that Mayfield and Landry aren't playing. And I only say that, not because I know for a fact, but they're 3.5-point home dogs, which would certainly not be the case if the expectation was that those two were going to play. And I know they have COVID absences elsewhere, but we can start it off there with Las Vegas, 3.5-point road favorites. Darren Waller is out here, and that's probably as good a spot as ever to start with this passing game, which has been just completely anemic of late.
Yeah, so the passing game has been pretty bad, and we're expecting heavy rain and winds tomorrow, which doesn't help. But the Browns have been worse against the pass than the rush. They're 20th in pass DVOA per Football Outsiders, 11th in rush DVOA. So I think that probably the Raiders will be throwing the ball some. Derek Carr, one of the players who has a positive leverage score currently in the boom bust tool, 21.3% projected ownership for Derek Carr, 27.1% optimal probability. So Derek Carr does look solid despite the really low total in this game and the heavy rain and winds. We'll see if that changes going into the game, but I think that Derek Carr is somebody that we can target. And I think that Foster Moreau looks really good in this spot. He's got slightly negative leverage, 25.5% projected ownership, 22.1% optimal lineup probability. But Cleveland has allowed 654 yards receiving and 8 touchdowns on the season to tight ends so far. So Foster Moreau coming in at 3,700 against a pretty weak Browns defense against tight ends looks really good. Obviously, Hunter Renfrow looks great. He actually has a positive leverage score, which kind of surprised me, given that Hunter Renfrow was up to 7,300. I thought that might be a little bit expensive for Hunter Renfrow, but I mean, he's been getting the targets. It kind of makes sense, I guess, when you take a macro look at it, that he's just been performing every week going off. So he's projected for 55.3% ownership with a 56.4% chance of being optimal. Yeah, I think that I'm excited about this passing attack. I'll add in Deshaun Jackson just looks incredible currently in the boom bust tool. 4.5% projected ownership, 14.4% optimal. I'm a little bit concerned with the weather with Deshaun Jackson just because he's usually such a long ball threat. Maybe they can get him involved with a dink and dunk kind of play, but I don't know. That's not really what I usually think of for Deshaun Jackson. I think of him as being kind of the home run type player. How are you feeling about this passing attack?
I definitely don't see a way that you really get away from Hunter Renfrow on a slate like this. It's going to be very difficult. And especially if Landry's out. I mean, Landry's right. Yet another one of those players who let's be clear about something. When he's been on the field recently, especially since Odell Beckham left, he has a target share around 27%. He's getting peppered with targets. And even last week, sure, it was a disappointing. Oh, well, he wasn't horrible. I mean, he still had 15 DraftKings points, but 5 receptions and a touchdown, only 41 yards. But he now has double-digit targets in back-to-back games, 28 targets over his last 3. So taking him out of the equation on a 2-game slate is significant. Look at the rest of the wide receivers, Neil, on this slate. We can move around a little bit here just to get to provide some context. I mean, Deshaun Jackson is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7th highest priced wide receiver on this slate. It's
at 3,700.
Yeah, it's not great. Right, exactly. At 3,700. So once you drop below Renfrow, you have Michael Pittman, who I like, but still not the greatest matchup. And we all know that Jonathan Taylor is the engine that makes that team go. Then you're talking Kendrick Bourne and Jacoby Myers and Donovan Peoples-Jones. We'll get to some good options and some good value, but Renfrow is far and away the best wide receiver option on this slate.
Yeah, no, he looks great. Yeah, I mean, that's the hard thing is because like everybody's going to be going there because it's very clear that Hunter Renfrow, Jonathan Taylor, like these top end players, it's easy to get to them because there are so many cheap options and they're just clearly the best at their positions. So I hate that their ownership is going to be high, but they all still look really good. Like they all still have really high optimal lineup probabilities. Yeah, I think Hunter Renfrow makes a lot of sense. I'm going to be playing a lot of Hunter Renfrow. Like I said, he has positive leverage despite the $7,300 price tag. So yeah, I think Hunter Renfrow makes a ton of sense. I'm almost wondering now. So I'm treating this for the most part like a showdown slate, almost like where you got to play some of these weird guys. If you're trying to win the millie, you're probably not going to do it with all of the chalkiest players. There's going to be a lot of lineups that are duplicated 200 times, 300 times, maybe more. So I'm treating this a little bit closer to a showdown slate than a regular slate, this 2-game slate, which makes me almost wonder if I want to leave salary on the table. It's not something that I historically do on these non-showdown slates, even short slates. I don't require that salary be left on the table. That might be something worth looking at. Maybe I'll try and study what some other pros are doing. Just it's kind of having this idea right now that maybe this is because there are some of these players, Deshaun Jackson, Zay Jones, Bryan Edwards, any one of them could go off. Like, it wouldn't shock us if any of them score a touchdown, because there's only really one receiver ahead of them on the depth chart. Like, I mean, ahead of Deshaun Jackson. I don't know who you consider the number 2 there. Anyway, but all of these guys are super cheap and very viable, and could become optimal at less than the full salary. So yeah, I have a lot of interest in all of these pass catchers. Hunter Renfrow, I'd say obviously Hunter Renfrow is my top option here. I think Foster Moreau probably number 2, then maybe Deshaun Jackson, just because. So we're looking at Deshaun Jackson versus Zay Jones. They're coming in at similar optimal lineup probability. Zay Jones 16.9% optimal. Deshaun Jackson just a little bit below him at 14.4% optimal. But in the large field tournaments, Deshaun Jackson only expected to have 4.5% ownership. Zay Jones up at 18%. So in terms of large field tournaments, I think that Deshaun Jackson makes a little bit more sense to me than Zay Jones, assuming this ownership stays the same. And then Bryan Edwards even looks pretty good. 3.7% projected ownership, 7.6% optimal lineup probability. Yeah, I think all of these guys are viable plays. I don't know if you want to go down to the Tyrone Johnsons of the world. Maybe you could on a 2-game slate, but I think that all these guys are low enough owned and very viable. So yeah, I think it's a good place to go. Do you think you're going to be playing a lot of Derek Carr? Do you think he's going to be your heaviest owned quarterback, or do you have any idea there yet?
So quickly, I just wanted to throw some numbers for Renfrow out there, and then we'll talk Carr. He's played 3 games without Waller this year. I'm using the game splits. He's averaging almost 10 receptions per game on those, which is just remarkable. Almost 100 yards. It's as easy as you just have to get there. He has an 84.3% reception rating this year, which is the highest in the league. As a matter of fact, it's so crazy that the only player, if you include running backs, that has a higher reception rate than him is Josh Jacobs with 51 targets. But you don't even have running backs outside of that with a high. It's truly crazy. So yeah, anyone with at least 50 targets, Hunter Renfrow is far and away the best there is in the league. And with Carr, it's been ugly lately. I mean, you've seen some really big trouble spots. Against Kansas City, they were completely anemic. Against Washington, that was an ugly game. Dallas was that solid one on Thanksgiving. That's the last real impressive performance they've had. But this offense has scored 16 or fewer points in 5 of their last 6 games. Prior to that, they were ripping off some really big performances. They've come back down to earth. It's looked ugly. But against such a decimated Cleveland team, I think you have to look there a little bit, because let's do the same thing we did with receivers. It's either Wentz. It's probably not. You probably don't have Mayfield, and Mayfield hasn't been particularly good to begin with. But I would, if he's good to go, I would definitely have a lot of Baker Mayfield against this Raiders defense. Mac Jones, who they prefer not to have him throw a lot, or Nick Mullins. Neil, I mean, Derek Carr is the best quarterback on this slate, because it's just there's nothing else to get to.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only thing really holding him back is probably that weather. We're looking at, like I said, heavy rain and winds. They do have that game has the lower total, which is not what I would have expected going in. I would have thought Patriots and Colts would have the lower total for sure, just because the defenses are so much better. But that's not the way it's looking. Currently, this game is only expected, they're expecting 38.5 points as the over-under for the Cleveland Raiders game. So That's the only reason that I think it might be viable to be going to, Wentz and Mac Jones. Mac Jones actually has a positive leverage score. He has the most positive leverage score of all of these receivers at 20.8% ownership, 28.3% optimal. So I'm not going to be going too hard, I don't think, on Derek Carr versus Baker Mayfield. I almost feel like you could split it. I don't think it would necessarily be wrong to just play 25% each of the 4 starting quarterbacks. I think that's almost viable on this slate because there's nobody who really totally stands out to me in terms of leverage, like in terms of their projected ownership versus their chances of being optimal. The guys who are over 25% have negative leverage scores. The guys who are under 25% projected ownership have positive leverage scores. I don't know how to play this one exactly. It's going to be, I guess I'll see how my lineups come out tomorrow. I haven't built them yet. Cleveland is a really interesting spot. We currently have Case Keenum as the quarterback in the boom bust tool. That might kind of shake things up depending on who's in there. It's looking, I think Nick Mullins is actually the most likely, but Baker Mayfield is the one that you'd be most happy to play. So I guess we're splitting the difference with Case Keenum being the projected starter. But yeah, I don't have really a strong take on any of these quarterbacks. I agree with you. Derek Carr is the best fantasy quarterback of the group. He's going to be, I guess he does have a positive leverage score. So yeah, you can play some Derek Carr, but it's a low total, bad weather. Those are the only things really holding you back there.
Yeah, no, and I'm concerned about that too. We'll see what the weather looks like by the time tomorrow rolls around. Sometimes things change. We know that when it comes to forecasting. But the one reason I don't like rostering Derek Carr, I haven't liked rostering him lately, is because they've just struggled. But he is attempting a ton of passes. Will that change in a spot like this? I don't know. It's definitely possible if Cleveland struggles to move the ball. But at Cleveland's implied total opened to 28, Neil. It's down to 17.5.
It's insane. Yeah.
Crazy.
You don't see movement like that very much.
No. I mean, on Sunday's game, the Eagles went from, I think, -3 to -12.
Wow.
Huge movement on these teams because they're facing they're facing Washington.
Yeah.
And Washington has 22 players on COVID list right now. But the thing I like most about Derek Carr is if I'm playing him, I know that I can stack him with Hunter Renfrow. And I know that there's enough value on this slate to where I'm not going to have to worry about, I'm playing Derek Carr, who's not particularly expensive, with Renfrow, who's up there, but there's so much value. And you mentioned Deshaun Jackson earlier. What better way to, again, weather permitting, we'll pay attention to that, but what better type of cheap player than a Deshaun Jackson, who on a 2-game slate might only need one big play to end up being in the optimal.
Yeah. We'll get here, but I just got the news that Damian Harris is out tomorrow. So that'll change the way we talk about the Patriots.
Wow.
Damian Harris is out. Yeah. Glad to get that news now so we can talk about that with a little bit more information.
Okay. Yeah. That's really big news because he'd been splitting with Ramondre Stevenson. Actually, it does kind of make sense, right? Because you saw him pull that hammy. He was going to run for 200 damn yards against Buffalo if he didn't pull that hammy in that win game. But they had a bye last week, right?
Yes, they did.
Yeah. So, okay. He's definitely banged up. Yeah. We'll get to that one. Let's talk about Cleveland first. Pay attention tomorrow. Deeper dive, live before lock. We'll have a live before lock for the New England and Indy game as well. But you got it. This strategy show is going to help you build the foundation, set the foundation. And then the actual structural components will come in tomorrow once we start to get an idea of whether or not these guys are activated. So I know usually on the primetime games, they have till 4:00 to activate these players. But when it comes to tomorrow, I don't know what time, I don't know when they'll have to activate players that can play. I'm not exactly sure if the first game's at 4:30.
Yeah, I don't know the exact rules in terms of players being reactivated when they're tested and stuff yet either. So yeah, we'll be having to pay close attention. I'm going to be on the deeper dive before the first game tomorrow, so hopefully I'll have a little bit better information for you there. We'll have to wait and see. Okay.
Yeah, and Benny, Chris said Stevenson and Bolden become interesting now. Bolden's also questionable. So, could he play? Sure, but if he doesn't play, then Stevenson, mega chalk. Yeah. Anyway, with Cleveland, we don't know what's going on, but I'm just going to read these up. I'll do it and try and be as concise as possible, but it's going to be tough. So Baker Mayfield, Case Keenum on the COVID reserve list at quarterback. At wide receiver, Jarvis Landry's on the COVID-19 reserve list, but Anthony Schwartz is out with a concussion, and JoJo Natson. If you don't know these guys, it's okay. Just understand that it all adds up. JoJo Natson also out, both of them out with COVID on the COVID-19 list and a concussion. Brown signed Lawrence Cager to the active roster from the practice squad as a wide receiver. He is in the player pool. Austin Hooper's on the COVID-19 list. David Njoku was just activated. And then Harrison Bryant, tending to an injury, is questionable. What a shit show in Cleveland, Neil.
Yeah, it's a major shit show. Also, they have Jamarcus Bradley, who is not on DraftKings. He's not in the player pool for some reason. They got Cager in there, but not Jamarcus Bradley, who has actually been relevant before. I'm pretty sure I played Jamarcus Bradley this season. So that kind of surprised me to see that he is not in the player pool. Something to keep in mind. But yeah, it's going to be really wild seeing who they actually end up throwing to. I don't know. It's going to be a fun game. I'm going to enjoy watching the game as somebody who's invested from a DFS standpoint. I don't really know how you watch this game if you're not. But currently, yeah. So we're expecting. We still have Jarvis Landry in the boom bust tool as in. So all of the boom bust data is a little bit irrelevant, I think, if he is ruled out for this team, because currently we have a major negative leverage score on Donovan Peoples-Jones, projected for 30.6% ownership with an 18.6% chance of being optimal. I suspect that if Jarvis Landry is ruled out, both of those numbers will go up, and I have no idea whether he will be positive leverage or negative leverage by the time that game comes around, but he will be their number one receiving option. So I imagine you're going to want to play some Donovan Peoples-Jones at 4,500, even in this bad weather game. And then Rashad Higgins at 3,000 becomes really interesting to me because he has some talent. I think they've given him chances before. He hasn't really succeeded, but I think now I still think that he's a good enough player that he could. It wouldn't be surprising to me at 3,000. I'm going to play some Rashad Higgins. Do you think you're going to get to any Lawrence Cager?
No, I don't, because I look at it. Okay, you're already dealing with weather. You're dealing with likely to be Nick Mullins. You're dealing with a team whose total has dropped 11 points. And you're also dealing with a team that prefers to run the football as much as possible anyway. So to me, it all kind of just adds up. And it makes me a lot more interested in somebody like Nick Chubb. And quite frankly, I don't see an issue getting to Dearness Johnson either in some lineups. Wouldn't shock me if good lineups have both of these guys. They're going to want to run the football. We've seen Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, who is out this week. I think I may have forgot to mention that. Kareem Hunt's out with an ankle injury. We've seen those two guys coexist in the same game with Baker Mayfield and Jarvis Landry. Now, if you take all of those guys out, you consider Vegas offense hasn't been great, and Cleveland's defense is susceptible to some big plays at times, but overall they're at least decent enough. I could see Nick Chubb and Dearness Johnson, specifically Chubb, but Dearness Johnson too, getting more than enough work in a game like this. And it would be shocking if Kevin Stefanski didn't look to absolutely grind down this Raiders defense, whose weakness is clearly the run game, with guys like Chubb, with guys like Dearness Johnson, and a good run blocking line. It's been banged up. I get that, but still, this should be the MO, the game plan for Cleveland. And if that's the case, I'm going to want a lot of Nick Chubb.
Yeah, so I am 100% with you. I'm glad you brought up Dearness Johnson. I tried this before against the Lions. It was a very similar situation where Dearness Johnson, at that point, he had been the healthy back, and then Nick Chubb came back. So I thought maybe Dearness Johnson would be in the Kareem Hunt role in that game. It was bad weather in that game. I thought nobody's going to play him. He's too cheap if he does assume that Kareem Hunt role. And then, of course, they just were terrible the whole game. It was Baker Mayfield was banged up. The weather was bad. They couldn't do anything. So it didn't work out. I'm going right back to it. We haven't projected for 4.7% ownership. Dearness Johnson.
And this is also a 2-game slate compared to a main slate.
Yep, exactly. I did it on a main slate. I mean, that's just me being a little bit nuts. But on a 2-game slate, I think that it's extremely viable for a player like Dearness Johnson at 4.7% projected ownership. I think that he's a great play on this slate, just because if they do rush the ball a little bit more. I mean, it's bad weather. They should be rushing the ball a little bit more against this Raiders defense that is susceptible to the run. I'm going to have a ton of both of these guys. I really like Nick Chubb. He has a slight negative leverage score. They actually both have slight negative leverage scores in the boom bust tool, but it's a 2-game slate. I think that there are scenarios where both of these guys, they just pound it the whole game. So I really like both Nick Chubb and Dearness Johnson. I'm glad you brought them up. And then Demetric Felton has been a little bit of a thorn in Dearness Johnson's side at times when he's been the number 2 back. He had 2 muff punts in the last game. That was his only offense in the last game. He had 2 muff punts. So I don't really think that Demetric Felton is going to be a huge issue this game. I could be wrong, but my expectation is that they're going to be rushing it a lot. And I'm going to want to be over the field, I think, over the field for sure on Dearness Johnson, probably by a good amount, and probably on Nick Chubb as well, even at 55% projected ownership.
Would you play both of these guys together in lineups?
For sure. On a 2-game slate. Yeah, I don't
Me
see
too.
anything wrong with that.
I have zero. Again, we're not doing this on a team that doesn't want to run the ball either. We're talking about a team that is more than willing to force feed their running backs as much work as possible in a spot like this. And they're still only 3.5-point dogs, despite all of the problems that they have right now in Cleveland. They're still only 3.5-point dogs. So sure, if it was in Vegas, it'd be 6.5 or around that. But I'm just not convinced that Vegas is a very good football team right now, which leads me to this run game heavily. Somebody said in chat, Nick Mullins isn't much of a downgrade. Look, in San Francisco last year, he was, I guess, serviceable. They had a lot of injuries. And yeah, Sterling, he had that 15 target game to Kittle, where Kittle, I thought, caught all 15 of them. It was against the Eagles. But I'd still say he is a downgrade. Nick Mullins is not very good. How much of a downgrade? I don't know. I'm not sure how much it's going to matter. But Donovan Peoples-Jones is at least somebody, especially if Landry's out, that I'm willing to get to. I liked him last week a lot, and he was fine. He had 5 for 90 on 7 targets. But the reason I like him is because he is your legitimate deep threat, your downfield threat. And on these short slates, if you can get a couple deep balls to him, even if it's Mullins, I'm willing to take some shots there. I'm not going to be heavy on anybody here, but I did want to ask you about David Njoku, because if Austin Hooper sits, Harrison Bryant might not play either. And David Njoku has just been activated from the COVID-19 reserve list. He makes for a really interesting play. I think he's mispriced at 2,800 given the circumstances.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would like David Njoku. If both Hooper and Bryant are out, for sure, David Njoku will look really great, especially in a bad weather game. He's a kind of player that you think would be targeted a little bit more when you're not wanting to throw it too deep. You're going to throw it probably to your big tight end. So yeah, I think David Njoku will look great. We currently have in the Boom Bust tool, we have Harrison Bryant projected to be in. I don't really know what to expect, whether he is going to play, but even with Harrison Bryant projected in, we have David Njoku projected for 13% ownership, 16.1% optimal lineup probability. So he has positive leverage even with Harrison Bryant in. I think if Bryant is out, he'll just look even that much better. I don't know if you could play Miller Forrestall, I think would be the number 2 tight end stepping in if Harrison Bryant and Austin Hooper are out. Maybe you could play it to get weird. I don't know that I'm going to be going there because I think that there are just enough inexpensive and unowned players that are just better than Miller Forrestall that I suspect he won't be necessary, but a name to throw out there. If both Hooper and Bryant are out, then he would, I think, become the number 2 tight end for the Browns. But yeah, in that scenario, I think David Njoku becomes a priority.
Do you think this is one of those slates where we don't need to go insanely crazy with off the wall plays because there aren't that many expensive players? Or do you still think you'll be taking some shots on some very obscure options on this slate?
I'll probably be taking some shots just because, you do need to get different a little bit. I don't want to have too many duplicated lineups. And I think the best way to avoid duplicated lineups is probably by taking some shots on some weird guys. But yeah, I don't think it's as much of a priority just because we do have so many low-owned options currently. We'll see if that remains the case tomorrow. But I mean, we have a lot of actually really solid low-owned options. I think Jalen Richard looks good. Brian Edwards. These guys are all under 5%. Deshaun Jackson's under 5% owned. They all look pretty solid. And then you got Rashad Higgins at 5.4% ownership. You could play, I guess, Lawrence Cager. Yeah, there's just so many guys that look like they're going to be pretty low. And Jonnu Smith, 5.9% projected ownership. There are a number of guys who aren't going to have a ton of ownership. So yeah, I don't think you need to get too crazy. I might take a shot here or there on some really weird plays. Maybe some people consider Dearness Johnson kind of a crazy play. I don't think he's that crazy, and he's a play that I'm going to be well over the field on. But I don't think you have to go really off the wall here, like a Harrison Forrestall, Miller Forrestall. I don't think you really need to be going that crazy on this slate.
Neither do I, and it's only because there's just going to be so much value. I mean, if Jarvis is out and our ownership projections update, Higgins ownership will definitely come up, but. Yeah. as you
Good
mentioned
point.
a second ago. Yeah,
Yep.
there's a lot of good cheap spots. We'll build. You and I are going to build a lineup. We're gonna hand
Okay.
build one at the end of the show and see what we can come up with for a large field. Because I haven't built anything yet. I'm curious to see with this little thought experiment where we land on. First, we got to talk about New England and Indianapolis. But if you haven't checked out our sponsor yet, well, you probably should get over to that, because whenever you're getting $100 risk-free first market guarantees, risk-free first market guarantee, I like that, then you should be taking advantage of it, because Jock Market, JOCKMKT, in the App Store, the Google Play Store, is turning fantasy sports into a stock exchange where you can make money every hour, every minute, down to the second. You're taking, it's actually a very simple concept, right? All you're doing is you're buying, holding, selling players throughout the day, throughout the games, whenever you want. And there's an IPO process as well. There's an IPO where you can pick up shares of your favorite players pre-game, and you can use our always free, never going to be behind a paywall, free Jock Market IPO projections to help you beat the market. So we're providing you with tools. We're providing you with projections, analysis, and all of that good stuff. And when you sign up using the promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO, you'll get a $50 deposit bonus upon signing up and depositing for the first time. But they have markets for NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA, PGA, all of that good stuff. And well, the biggest thing is, like I said, the first market guarantee, where they will refund at Jock Market any losses up to $100 on your first NFL or NBA market, up to $100. Very cool. It's not time consuming. You can do it sitting on your couch. You could do it on a car ride in the passenger seat, of course, where you're going anywhere. That's what's great about it. Get something to sweat where you don't have to be at your computer all day. You don't have to worry about late swap or injuries or any of that. Just check out Jock Market, download it in the App Store, Google Play Store, use that promo code Awesemo, and let us know what you think. Jock Market, sponsor of the NFL Strategy Show. All right, Neil, New England, we just got the Damian Harris news. That's huge. I think we start there. And for anyone just joining us, he is out. Break this backfield down for me.
Yeah, so I mean, Ramondre Stevenson, I think, is going to be the chalkiest running back on the slate at 4,900. The Colts are 5th in rush DVOA and 17th in pass DVOA.
Hold on, let me say, I'm sorry, real quick, Neil.
Yep.
Do you think he gets above Jonathan Taylor?
No, actually, I take it back. I think that Jonathan Taylor will remain the chalkiest, just because you have the salary. It's easy to get to Jonathan Taylor.
Right.
I think people will still prefer to play Jonathan Taylor, but my guess is that he does get to Nick Chubb level, probably above Nick Chubb level.
Yeah, I think second highest.
Yeah, I think that's probably the way that it goes. But he's with that being the case, that is pretty mega chalk. We're expecting him to be over 55% owned.
Yeah,
maybe Nick Chubb comes down a little bit now, but yeah, I think that it's likely that Ramondre Stevenson is going to come in at over 50% owned. I'm going to wait and kind of see what the tools say tomorrow once we get that update. Like I said, I'm going to be on the deeper dive, so we can talk about it a little bit more to determine whether that is actually positive leverage or negative leverage, because I don't really know what to expect there. The Colts have such a good rush D that there are ways that it fails. I think at 4,900, he's not the minimum, and you need some raw points, so it's possible that he just doesn't do that well against the Colts. I'm obviously going to be playing some. I don't think that he's like a player that you're going to want to fade, because he is a talented running back. We've seen him have some success. He's 4,900. And then where it really gets interesting is if Brandon Bolden doesn't play. Well, so I think that Brandon Bolden is also a great play. If Brandon Bolden plays, I think that he is a phenomenal play. He is their best pass catching back. He's 4,100. We have him currently projected for 3.1% ownership with a 9.6% optimal lineup probability. That's with Damian Harris in. So both of those numbers will go up. We'll see how the leverage comes out. But I think Brandon Bolden is going to be a really interesting play tomorrow, regardless, at 4,100 against the Colts. And then if Bolden is out, I don't know if you play. Currently, JJ Taylor is on the COVID list. So if he's out, maybe then is Divino Zigbo would be the RB2 in New England. I would expect him to get no ownership. So he would probably become a little bit interesting. But I think that the one thing that we know for sure at this point is Ramondre Stevenson is going to get a lot of ownership, and it will be deserved. It's just unclear at this point whether it will be deserved to the point of where the ownership comes in at, because it's not a can't fail situation. Like I think we almost had that a few weeks ago with Sony Michel, where it was like, it would have been really tough for Sony Michel to fail against the Jaguars. I don't think that we have that situation with Ramondre Stevenson against this Colts defense, because the defense is good enough that they could just stifle him, force the Patriots to throw a little bit. But it is definitely a really good spot. What do you think about this Patriots backfield? Do you think you're going to be playing a lot of Stevenson, Bolden if he's in? Will you play any Ozigbo if he's the number 2?
I don't know if I want to get to Ozigbo, because actually I could probably tell you right now that I won't, because assuming Bolden plays. So you're saying, wait, if Ozigbo is the number 2, would I?
Exactly. If Bolden is out.
Yeah. I think
he's questionable.
I think that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. He's minimum salary. It's going to be pretty easy to get to whoever you want. But right now, Stevenson is just not, you're right. It's not automatic. It's not at a can't fail spot. I agree. Indy's run defense is pretty solid as well. So I'll take all of that into consideration. But Stevenson's not too bad. And the one thing I love is that Belichick has been 100% willing to get him the football. 24 carries last game. Yes, they ran the ball almost 97% of the time they ran the ball last game. So it's an outlier, understandably so. But with Damian Harris out against Cleveland, Stevenson saw 20 carries, and he would have seen considerably more, but they routed them 45-7. So with Damian Harris out, my guess is that Stevenson, assuming this is a competitive game, and I see no reason to believe it won't be, probably eclipses 20 touches once again. And at $4,900, that's just too good of a spot to ignore. If you want to get away from it in tournaments, maybe some lineups, Neil, we could go Bolden over Stevenson. Maybe Stevenson gets banged up or just isn't productive, and Bolden is probably going to be the one, if active, that gets a decent amount of the pass catching responsibilities. And we know that with, guys like James White, they've never been afraid to throw the ball as an extension of the run. So I think there's ways to get different here, but I do love Stevenson with Harris out. I also like Bolden a lot. I think you could go to both of them too. If you want to get really crazy, maybe this offense really is pretty good. And we've seen them with some huge, surprising performances. Maybe Bolden catches a touchdown and gets 10 carries, and Ramondre Stevenson gets 20 carries on the ground. I don't think it's out of the question that both of these guys can be viable.
Yeah, I don't think so either. It's also going to be, somewhat dependent on when the news comes out. So if news comes out after lock that Brandon Bolden is out, then my interest in Divine Ozigbo will probably go up because nobody else will be playing him. I think it's also a great late swap situation in that, depending on how your early players do, you might want to swap on to a Brandon Bolden or Divine Ozigbo. If they're lower owned, you might want to swap on those guys if your early players aren't doing well, just to kind of try to catch up. I was just trying to see, somebody in chat said Clowney is out now. I was trying to see if that is the case. I can't find any verification of that, but that would be kind of interesting if that is true. But yeah, sticking with this backfield, yeah, I agree with you. I think they're all in play. I think just keep in mind that when the news comes out is going to affect the ownership. If the news comes out after lock that Brandon Bolden is out, then my interest in Divine Ozigbo, lock of the first game, I should say. If the first game locks and we don't have the news yet on Brandon Bolden, and then an hour and a half before the second game starts, we hear that Brandon Bolden is out, then my interest in Divine Ozigbo will go up a lot because he will be the number 2. I don't think that people would get there. So I think that that's the case where in a large field tournament, you would want to have some interest in Divine Ozigbo. But yeah, I think that we're going to sort of have to take a wait and see approach, see, how the news breaks, how the ownership is affected. Our ownership projection is affected by the fact that Harris is out. But my expectation is that I'll get to 2 Patriots running backs, probably not 3. I'm not totally sure, but I think that I'll get to whoever the 2 starters are, whether it be Stevenson and Bolden or Stevenson and Ozigbo. But we'll have to wait and see how that news breaks with Bolden tomorrow.
Clowney is in fact out.
Okay.
All right. Well, anything else you want to hit on we got to talk about the passing game a little bit here, even though it's not exciting.
Yeah.
You've got Jacoby Myers, Nelson Aguilar, and then you mentioned it earlier, but Jonnu Smith actually makes for a pretty interesting topic of conversation here. I've been saying all season that when Hunter Henry was pulling all of that crazy ownership, he was more than twice as expensive as Jonnu Smith. And if you want to go crazy and be a little bit different, just go to Jonnu Smith at almost minimum salary, because he's actually been involved in the red zone. And what you're looking for is simply a touchdown from this guy on a 2-game slate. So I don't have any issues with that. I will generally avoid New England's offense or passing game if I can, but I have no problem getting to Jacoby Myers or Nelson Aguilar or Jonnu Smith. Even Hunter Henry, I think, will be a very contrarian option, but that would be the only thing I'd say about him. I'm not excited about his price point or his current role in the offense.
Yeah, so I was reading Nate Otto's synopsis of this case just to get a little recap before the show, and I found this really interesting. He pointed out that the Indy defense is allowing 17.2 fantasy points per game to tight ends. They've allowed 87 receptions for 890 yards and 6 touchdowns on the year. So that is why I have some interest in both of the New England tight ends, just because Indy has been so bad against tight ends, and we don't really expect the ownership to be too crazy here. They both Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith currently have positive leverage scores in the boom bust tool. We've got Hunter Henry projected for 16.7% ownership with a 25.2% optimal lineup probability. That's pretty massive. So I have some interest in Henry at 4,200. And yeah, as you were saying, Jonnu Smith, we're projecting for under 6% ownership, 5.9% projected ownership for Jonnu Smith. We know that he has some talent. We've got him 8.6% optimal lineup probability. He's 3,000. I don't think that really any starting tight end should be that low owned on a 2-game slate. And I think that for Jonnu Smith in particular in this matchup, I think that's a spot I'm going to want to get well over the field.
All right, Neil, let's talk about Indiana, or we could call them Indianapolis. Too much crossover between NBA and NFL. Jonathan Taylor, we haven't projected for, ready for this? Tyler, or you're not Tyler, Mike, do you have a drum roll drop? Yeah, we need some drum roll drops up in here. 89.1%, Neil. 89.1% and 91.4% on FanDuel. And you know what? The truth is, if you're fading Jonathan Taylor, you got some balls of steel. And I can kind of respect it, because this is the crazy thing for me. And you're the perfect person to ask this question. If he really is going to be 90% up on a 2-game slate, how much merit is there to saying, all right, maybe Jonathan Taylor doesn't have a good game. Maybe he gets hurt. Maybe that. And just to provide a little bit more context, the problem I have with that, and you can put a bow on it, is if he does still have like 17 fantasy points, which is bad for a big slate, is that still enough on this slate with 2 projected low scoring games and 4 teams that aren't exactly offensive powerhouses through the air? Love to hear your explanation.
Yeah, so it very well could be enough. I think that if it gets up to 90% ownership, I'm going to not fully fade him, but I think I'm going to come well under the field if he gets up to 90% projected ownership. Just because, so now we have Ramondre Stevenson, we have Nick Chubb. I think that we have some, and we have Josh Jacobs. I think that we have 3 other players at least, and to an extent, I think D'Ernest Johnson, you could add to that list as too. I think we've got players that could do better than 17 if he has a fine but not good game. I think that we have players that could beat him in this spot, just because I think on this slate in particular, I think that we have those. There would be some 2-game slates where I would just say I'm going to eat that chalk, but I think that this is one where just like from a raw points perspective, even though you don't really need that you have a lot of flexibility in the salaries. I think from just a raw points perspective, there's not a low probability that 2 running backs beat Jonathan Taylor if he has a bad game, if he gets hurt in the 3rd quarter and doesn't completely go off. I still think that he's obviously the best player, the most likely to put up a huge game of any of these running backs, but at 90%, this is football. NBA, I'm okay, 80 and a 90% chalk player, but even on a 2-game slate, I don't think that I would eat that in an NFL slate. So I think at 90%, I would probably be well under the field. Do you think you would just eat the chalk, or do you think you would try to get under as well?
That's the problem I have, is I don't know how much Taylor needs. And this would be a better question for, you or Alex or somebody like that. And you did a great job of explaining it. I just look at it and I go, like, if I'm fading Taylor, what are my alternatives here? Is it Josh Jacobs against Cleveland? Is it, who else?
Ramondre Stevenson, Nick Chubb, Dearness
Right.
Johnson.
Yeah, Nick Chubb for sure. But you still, you have to play 2 running backs already.
Yep.
I feel like most lineups are going to have 3 running backs. If, with Damian Harris out, you can do it. And you're definitely going to be leaving salary on the table. That's a foregone conclusion at this point. Shit, I don't even know if you could fill everything up. I don't know if you could make a lineup.
You might not be able to. Yeah. Yeah. And it's a tough spot. It's a tough question because there are so few options. I think that I'll go into the field just because I think that some of these other running backs do actually have ceilings. I think they have pretty high ceilings. Josh Jacobs in a pretty good spot now with Jadeveon Clowney, just gets that much better. Both the Cleveland guys. But still, it would make me a little bit sick to my stomach to fade. I probably wouldn't be fading Jonathan Taylor in any high dollar contest. I think that it's viable to do in the milli. I don't know that I would be fading Jonathan Taylor in a 5,000 person contest, for example, something a little bit small. I just think for the largest field tournaments, I think it's viable if he gets up to like 90% ownership, just because I do think that there are other running backs that I would be happy to roster on this slate. It's just, the thing that holds us back, as we're saying, is just that you do have basically unlimited salary here. So if you're not playing Jonathan Taylor, it's going to be tough. You're probably not going to be able to use up your salary, which that's okay if you think that those other players can beat him from a raw points perspective. But man, it is kind of asking a lot. So I think that I would be under the field. I don't think that I would full fade Jonathan Taylor. I'm not expecting to full fade Jonathan Taylor in 150 lineups. But I think that I would come under the field if he really is at 90% ownership.
Dan Graziano just said, I'm being told there have been NFLPA discussions today about rescheduling Saturday's Raiders-Browns game, likely to Monday or Tuesday, a decision that could be announced within the next hour. And then Adam Schefter quote tweeted, Raiders are supposed to board buses to go to the airport at 11:15 Pacific time. And some players have said that they are being told at this time to stand down, which is a very odd way of phrasing that.
Yeah.
Stand down. We'll see. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
so a lot of this might be becoming irrelevant very quickly.
Yeah, it's very possible.
We'll see.
Benny said, Loughy, I don't care who the player or how good the situation. I'll never play a 90% owned running back. Okay. That's fine. I mean, he's the best running back in the world right now. So I get coming in underweight on him, but a full fade feels like an awful idea. I don't know.
I'm reading that I look like a serial killer who's plotting a courthouse bombing as we speak. I can't say I've gotten that one before.
Where?
Shark kill a G. All right.
To be clear, you're not planning a courthouse bombing as we speak.
I don't want to give away what I'm thinking.
Yeah, you would be a really bad serial killer if that was the case. See, the problem is when the mics are hot and you're like, yeah, I'm going to try and get into chat today. That's when the floodgates open.
Shouldn't have said that.
All right. Did we get some crazy responses around here?
No, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. Gotta laugh at them. Yeah. We only have a few minutes left, Neil, and I want to build a lineup. Where are you at on the passing game, specifically Michael Pittman? And I guess you could talk T.Y. Hilton and Jack Doyle for the Colts.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Pittman, like we're saying, you have basically unlimited salary. Michael Pittman is one of the better receiving options in this game. We have him at slight negative leverage. So he's 5,900. We have him 60.2% ownership with only a 54.1% chance of being in the optimal lineup. But that's still a pretty high odds of being in the optimal lineup. So I'm going to be playing plenty of Michael Pittman. T.Y. Hilton has positive leverage. We only have him projected for 21.1% ownership with a 25.9% optimal lineup probability. As we said, this is the higher projected game on the slate. So I like getting to some of these pass catchers. Zach Pascal also looks pretty good. 18.3% projected ownership, 21.6% optimal lineup probability. I'll probably play some of him. They all look fine. I'm probably playing about even with the field, maybe just over the field on all of these guys. And then Ashton Doolin, I don't know. He's not even in the boom bust tool, but he's 3,100. He scored a touchdown over Thanksgiving weekend, I believe. He catches balls here and there. It's a 2-game slate. There are worse plays than Ashton Doolin, I guess. I'm not super excited about any of the Colts players, pass catchers. I think that they're all fine. Jack Doyle, looks okay. 16.3% projected ownership, 9.8% optimal lineup probability at 2,900 against the Patriots. You could play Jack Doyle. Mo Alley Cox feels like he's kind of fallen off a little bit. He just hasn't really done much this year. Every year I kind of go in thinking that he's going to break out. He's just this big monster of a guy, red zone target, but hasn't really taken off this year, even though the Colts have played really well. We've got him at 5.7% projected ownership, 7.1% optimal lineup probability. I'll take my chances there. I'll be probably over that 7.1% optimal, or over that 5.7% projected ownership and over the 7.1%. Do you have any interesting takes on any of these players? This isn't a spot where I'm really excited about any of them. They're just all kind of like, I'll sprinkle them in. I'm not really taking any stands, I don't think, on the Colts receivers. Are you?
No, I much prefer Pittman in negative game scripts, but I'm fine with him in neutral game scripts, and I anticipate this being the case. So I like Pittman. I think this will be a competitive game. No issues with Michael Pittman, and Jonathan Taylor and Pittman are the two guys that you're going to want the most of. Again, this is a big puzzle at this point. It's a big game theory discussion for sure. And Pittman and Taylor are both getting a lot of ownership. So if you're trying to be different there, I totally understand going to T.Y. Hilton here. There's no doubt about it. He's not exciting at all, but I get it if you wanted to do that. We saw Jack Doyle. He's 2,900. If it turns out that David Njoku is more popular, you could go to someone like Doyle. But I think Doyle's fine anyway. None of the guys in this passing game, when you have Jonathan Taylor, are going to be, shockingly good plays on paper. It's just, I was obviously outside of Pittman. That's what makes me a little bit more interested here, because Pittman's going to be one of the highest owned players on the slate and the second highest owned wide receiver right now. All right, so we only have 2 minutes. We built a lineup. Mike, we had to skip Awesemo Hall of Fame. We do have free content on the site, though. NFL Top Stack Tool is completely free today. NBA player rankings, NHL player rankings, MMA pro plays, all of that stuff totally free. And if you want to get access to the Express Pass, take advantage of it, because what we're looking at right now, all of the showdown tools, ownership, the top plays, single game top plays tool, all of our projections for showdown slates, and a lot of main slate content as well. All of their tiers, tools, and content is included in this. It's less than $4 a week. If you do it now, you're getting tomorrow's game, probably going to be one. You're getting Sunday night showdown, Monday night showdown, probably Tuesday night showdown, all of that well worth less than $4. Awesemo.com/join. So let's do this, Mike. Let's do this. Yeah, Mike and Neil, you got lineup builder pulled up. Neil, let's just start with quarterback, and then we'll turn this over to the NHL strategy show. Who do you want to go with if we're going large field tournament?
Should we just try to use all of our salary and see if it works?
I've done it. It does work. Yeah,
it does.
Let's do it.
You can use all your salary? Oh,
yes.
So
with Taylor, you can, but not without Taylor, you can. But okay. It's tough.
All right. So quarterback, let's see. I think let's just go with Derek Carr, and we like the pass catches. Let's just start there with Derek Carr.
Okay. I'm going to go Nick Chubb.
Okay. I am going to go Ramondre Stevenson.
I like it. Do we want to try fading Taylor in the lineup? Just assume it's a large field.
Yeah, let's see if it works.
All right. If that's
so in that case,
I want to go Pittman though.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I could then switch to Josh Jacobs if we're gonna fade Taylor. Now let's stick with Stevenson, see where we land. All right. You want to play Pittman?
Yeah, we could also go Wentz over Carr if we wanted to, because if we're fading Taylor, either we're playing for a low scoring game.
That's a good idea. Yep.
Yeah, or we're playing for the aerial attack in Indianapolis. So I'll go Pittman.
All right, let's go. Let's switch to Wentz then.
Yeah, I did. So we got Wentz, Chubb, Stevenson, and Pittman.
All right, I'm still gonna go Renfro.
Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna throw in. So we got Wentz. I'll go with Zach Pascal. Or do we want to go T.Y. Hilton? No, let's go with Pascal. He hasn't been scoring a lot of touchdowns lately. Hasn't really been targeted as much. Let's go T.Y. Hilton.
Okay. I just tried turning on YouTube to see where we're at, and we're a minute behind on.
Yeah, we'll get out of here right after this. We're almost done.
All right. So at tight end, let's go with Hunter Henry, since we didn't play Derek Carr.
Sure. All right. Little run back option there. We got 48.50 remaining. Let's just throw the Raiders defense in and see what we get at a flex spot.
Okay.
All right. So Raiders defense, 6,700 left. There's Jacobs is 6,600.
Oh, beautiful.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that because fading Taylor and it's alone is enough to get different there.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. I kind of like that. If there's a slate this week, I may throw that in a couple lineups, Neil.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Seems unlikely, but if there is.
It seems unlikely. This has been fun, though, man. This is a great show. Follow Neil at Player Q DFS. Follow me at Loughy_D. Shout out to Mike Lawrence for producing the show. Check out the NHL Strategy Show and all the other content we got coming up today for the NBA slate. We'll see you back here shortly. Tomorrow, we're going to have content no matter what. If there's one game or two games, we'll be here right on the Awesemo YouTube channel. So hit that thumbs up, subscribe, and we'll catch you back here very soon. Peace.